I'm so happy because I want to beat them so bad. In 3 games, we were so close and we gave all the games 100% and we lost. And today, finally, we won.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Fantrax and Basketball Monster. And today's Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast is also brought to you by SeatGeek. Download the mobile app for the easiest way to buy tickets and use the promo code LOFANTASY to get yourself a $20 rebate on your first purchase. Today's show is also brought to you by Brent Namias, who is today's Patreon sponsor. So head across to patreon.com/redrock_bball if you want to support the show that way. My name is Josh Lloyd, and as always, you can find me on Twitter at redrock_bball. The same over on Instagram and facebook.com/redrockbasketball, where you can watch the live stream of this show each night after the games are done. We're going to talk about all of Sunday's action. We're going to do a preview of the week ahead, and then look to Monday for the action for DFS to help set your lineups. So
let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. We will start off with the week ahead, week 22 or week 21, depending on your preferred method of nomenclature. We've got we're smack bang in the fan, and if you're not in your fantasy playoffs now, then what the hell is going on? You are surely in your playoffs at this point. If you are not in your playoffs and you are still listening, fantastic. I encourage everyone to keep listening all through the season, because there's going to be hopefully entertainment, there's going to be information, there's going to be plenty of stuff happening as the season progresses. We head into the playoffs. We do playoff recaps and DFS stuff for playoff games, and we're going to do season review stuff, and heaps of NBA draft things. The podcast never stops. You know that. Let's talk week 22, and we've got a fairly even week here. Monday we have 7 games. Tuesday we have 8. Wednesday we have 8. Thursday we have 5. So for the first 4 days of the week, you can get really some pretty good streaming happening. Now, at the end of the week, Friday has 10 games, Saturday has 5, and Sunday has 10. So that puts a little bit of a wrinkle in things, mainly because on Friday and Sunday you might not be able to use waiver wire acquisitions, especially Sunday, which is the week or the day where you're really looking to bring in your categorical boosters, the guys that, shit, I'm down by 2 threes, who can I get off the wire that might hit 2 or 3 threes? You might do that, but then you might look at your actual active roster and might not have a spot for them, or have to bench someone else who might be productive as well. So that does make it tough. Using your streamers earlier in the week, when you can definitely get them in on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, is good. Still obviously hold 1 or 2 for Sunday, because you might be in a situation where, even say you're well up in rebounds and field goal percentage and blocks, and you've got Hassan Whiteside, and you go, all right, well, maybe I have to sit Hassan because I just need my assists up and I need to get someone off the wire. Let's get some assists going and add them in. And you shouldn't be afraid to do that in a situation like the one I just outlined. And that'll happen to plenty of people as the week progresses. Let's talk about the schedule, though, for weekly schedule people. The Clippers have got 5 games. Notoriously, at this time of the year when teams have 5 games, players don't play in 5 games. So you can always look, and people do this way too much, in my opinion, when they're heading into their drafts in October. Man, I've got to draft the Clippers. They've got a 5-game week in the fantasy playoffs. Cool. People did that last year with the Nets. People did that last year with the Bulls. People did that this season with the Blazers, I believe. Was it the Blazers? I don't remember who it was, but it almost never works out. And we've seen the Clippers rest Blake and DeAndre just last week. With 5 games coming up, I think you will find that the Clippers will rest someone at some point. It might not be DeAndre Jordan. It might not be Blake. Maybe it's Chris Paul. Maybe it's JJ Redick, who looks like an appealing waiver wire target. Jamal Crawford, Austin Rivers. I don't think that Rivers would necessarily rest, but he might play 17 minutes for 3 games and 25 for 2 of them. It's an interesting scenario. So when you're looking to add these guys, don't assume necessarily that everyone plays 5 games, especially say a guy like Jamal Crawford, an older guy that I know is in immaculate condition, but maybe he misses a game. And again, guys like Paul or Griffin or Jordan, don't be surprised if they sit out one of these games with this week ahead, with a 5-game week at this point of the season. Then there's a real possibility. Now, they start the week with a back-to-back and they end the week with a back-to-back. So it's going to be very interesting to see the way that Doc Rivers really does apply this. He could sit them out on the Tuesday against the Lakers and give them 2 days off before they take on the Mavericks, or he could sit them out on the Sunday against the Kings, or even the Saturday against the Jazz to give them the Friday, Saturday off. So there is some possibilities here for the Clippers for that 5-game week, maybe not to be as attractive as what it might appear on the surface. We've got 14 teams that play 4 games and 15 teams that play 3 games. So no 2-game weeks, a pretty busy schedule for the week. The 4-game teams: Atlanta, Brooklyn, Boston, Charlotte, Chicago, Denver. The Warriors, the Pacers, the Bucks, Knicks, Sixers, Suns, Blazers, and Wizards. The 3-gamers: Cavs, Mavs, Pistons, Rockets, Lakers, Grizzlies, Heat, Timberwolves, Pelicans, Thunder, Magic, Kings, Spurs, Raptors, and Jazz. So that's the way the week shakes out for weekly games. When we want to have a look at the ease of team schedules, we're mainly looking at the 3-game teams making a decision at the back end of your roster. So you've got people that play for Detroit and for Cleveland. Their schedules are a lot easier than someone that plays for, say, Toronto, who has to take on Miami, Dallas, and Chicago, or Memphis, who takes on the Pelicans, the Spurs, and the Warriors. Detroit has Brooklyn, Chicago, and the Magic. Cleveland has Denver, Charlotte, and Washington. So much easier matchups, and that can be a considerable difference in terms of value between those players, just in terms of the 3 matchups they've got during the week. In the 4-gamers, most of the people you play in 4 games will work to your benefit, and you will have them in your starting lineup. But the Knicks, if you are interested, have the worst of the 4-game schedule. They play all 4 on the road against the Clippers, the Jazz, the Blazers, and the Spurs. An absolute nightmare of a matchup, while the Wizards have the Celtics, Hawks, Nets, and Cavs, one of the best 4-game schedules, the best 4-game schedule that is out there. Of course, we have all this broken down on our schedule analyzer over at Basketball Monster, which you can check out and see how the schedule affects your players and which guys you should start and shouldn't start for the week coming up. A lot of it, though, is going to depend on matchups, which also you can check on Basketball Monster, do the head-to-head weekly analysis, see how your team might be coming out on top based on who you think your opponent might start. Are there big discrepancies in certain categories? Are there small, toss-up categories as well that you need to really attack, and that might influence the decision you make. So it might not just come down to 3 games or 4 games or weak schedule or bad schedule or good schedule or anything like that. It might come down to, I just need point guards, and I don't care if he's got a shit schedule, but Corey Joseph in 3 games, he's got the worst schedule out of everybody. I need his ability to maybe get me 20 assists in 3 games. And you'll just have to plug that in. So it does come down to many different factors when setting your lineup for the week. As I said, in daily leagues, we've got really good streaming possibilities to kick off the week. We're looking at Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday as days when you can easily stream players in. You can do it on Saturday as well, and Friday and Sunday. Hey, check your roster. You might be able to do it on those days too. 10 games is not an automatic write-off in terms of being able to keep people into that, or be able to use people and have an open, active roster spot. But it might not work for you. But if you tackle those other 5 days, it definitely should work in your it should work in your favor if you look at it that way. But that remains to be seen. So when we're going to have a look at this, we want to look at back-to-backs and maximizing games played for acquisitions. So we start off the week with Monday, Tuesday back-to-backs. We've got the Clippers, who have got a back-to-back to start off the week. The Warriors have got a back-to-back. They're the only 2 teams that have that Monday, Tuesday back-to-back. So you're talking about guys like Jamal Crawford, Austin Rivers, JJ Redick, players like that on the Clippers. Even Mo Spates might come into consideration. For the Warriors, Zaza Pachulia, does that work out on a Monday, Tuesday back-to-back? Andre Iguodala, Matty Barnes. Maybe if you're real desperate, you throw in Pat McCaw. Probably want to be a pretty deep league for that to be the case. Tuesday, Wednesday back-to-backs. We've got the Milwaukee Bucks, who have got a back-to-back there, and that is it. So 1 team to attack there, but you could add in numerous players out of that group of guys. Dellavedova, Brogo, if he hasn't been owned, Tone Snell could come up. Mirza Teletovic, if you need some streaming for 3s, that could be a viable option for you. For the Wednesday, Thursday back-to-backs, I said the Knicks have got the worst of the 4-game schedules, but they've got that Wednesday, Thursday back-to-back, the only team that's got that back-to-back there. So Bill Hernangomez, Lance Thomas, Justin Holiday, rugged Ronnie Baker, maybe one of those guys could be worthwhile for that stream there. Then you want to look at Friday, probably not. Friday, Saturday, again, we're talking about those heavier days. So the last pseudo back-to-back is the Thursday, Saturday. And there are a few teams that have got that. The Clippers have that. The Blazers have that. The Knicks have that as well. The Knicks have got, I said, 4 games, but all 4 of their games come on quality days. So much like the Clippers, they have the best schedule in terms of that all 4 of their games come on those lower volume days. And that can obviously work in your favor. We've also got the Spurs, the Mavericks, and the Raptors having that Thursday, Saturday pseudo back-to-back. Another team that's worth looking at in terms of games being active, the Spurs, the Mavericks, and the Raptors only play 3 games, but all 3 of those games, and along with the Jazz, all 3 of those games come on streamable days, so that can be more useful than it seems on the surface. And they're joined by the Wizards, who also have 3 games on streamable days. A lot of these other 4-game teams, well, in fact, every other 4-game team aside from Washington and Portland and the Knicks, so 11 of the 4-game teams have only got 2 games on streamable days. So that makes them maybe not as valuable as someone from the Jazz who play 3 games, or the Spurs, or the Mavericks, or the Raptors. But it always does come down to how your team sets up, how your opponent sets up, how your individual schedule sets up, and where you've got openings in your lineup. That's very important to see. I can see we've got a ton of people who are watching this live at the moment, so welcome to everybody who is watching live. Just hit that like button on Facebook and get the likes flowing in. And I see a lot of questions have come through as well. So what I'm going to do, maybe I'll tackle some of these questions just to kick things off now. All right, let's bring them up. Let's where are we? This thing is just moving too fast. Okay, where are we? All right, so everyone's just basically talking amongst themselves. No real questions there, so that's good. Oh, we'll get through all this in a sec, but thank you for all the likes and the comments. It is absolutely flying through at the moment with all this. Is Wilson Chandler worth a note? There's a question from Joey. Yeah, he is. Now, Denver do have a pretty good schedule. They've got the 4 games. They start on Monday, so if he plays then that's obviously good. They've got Monday, Wednesday. They play Friday, Sunday as well. So the back end of the week is not ideal for Wilson Chandler. Maybe he's not even in your best 10 players. He might be, but he might not be. So if he's ready to go for Monday, then yes, he would be a viable player in that sort of a situation. Mitchell throws in that Detroit has got a back-to-back Tuesday, Wednesday. Did I not mention them? I apologize if I didn't mention them. They do have a back-to-back on Tuesday and Wednesday. Them, along with the Bucks, they are the other team who have got that back-to-back on Tuesday, Wednesday. Thank you, Mitchell, for that. All right, it's now time to bring up today's sponsor, and that is SeatGeek. You guys know what SeatGeek is, but if you don't, I'm telling you anyway, because buying tickets online for sports and concerts has always been a confusing process. It's always been hard to get that best deal for the game or show that you want to go to, and none of these older ticket sites want to change that, but SeatGeek's different. They've come along, they've made an amazing app and a website that makes it easier than ever for fans to buy and sell tickets. It should be the first place that you go to look for tickets. It's the first place that I go to look for tickets. It's easy, plus you get great tickets, plus you get them at a great price. Just get that SeatGeek app on your phone, and whatever show or concert or game you want to go to, SeatGeek can help you out. Everything about SeatGeek is designed to make life easier for sports and music fans. It does all the price comparison for you, searching multiple ticket sites and giving you the best possible deal available. SeatGeek does all that work for you, saves you time and money, and it helps you get the most bang for your buck. That's why every ticket on SeatGeek is given a grade based on value, so you'll immediately see any underpriced seats and be able to find the best deals that fit your budget. Best of all, my listeners get a $20 rebate off their first SeatGeek purchase. To get your $20 rebate on tickets, download the SeatGeek app. Very easy, straight from your app store. Download that app, go to the settings tab and click add a promo code. And that promo code, of course, is LOFantasy. So use that code. And once you make your first ticket purchase on SeatGeek, they will send you $20. So $20 after you make your first purchase. It is money for nothing. Download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code LOFantasy today. A few more questions coming in here before we get to the monstrous line of the night and all the awards. Ron Jennings throws in, is Taurean Prince worth an ad this week? Well, he is to start the week because Paulie Millsap is out for the first couple of games and Kent Bazemore is going to be out for the first week and a half. Prince had been going from 10 minutes to 30 minutes and he played like 28 or 29 the last 2. And with him playing as a 3 and a 4 and the Hawks losing a 3 and a 4, then Torian Prince is going to absorb a lot of that playing time. Ersan Ilyasova will likely start in place of Millsap, and you'll probably get Tabo Cephalosha starting in place of Bazemore, but Prince is going to be the primary backup at both of those positions, and I think that you're going to be able to find some pretty decent numbers. Now, he won't block 7 blocks. He won't block 7 shots in 2 games, which is what he's done the last 2 games. That's unrealistic. So if you're looking at his numbers and go, man, he's going to give me all the blocks, it's going to help. Look, no, he won't, because he won't be able to do it in that sort of a volume. But he can score okay, he can block an occasional shot, an occasional steal, get some points, get some threes. Just don't expect that heavy load of blocks at what he's been giving you over the last couple of games, because it's unrealistic for him to continue. And don't be surprised if he doesn't block a shot for the entire week. That's a possibility. You have 7 in 2 games, and then maybe things even out over the rest of the week. So that's something to bear in mind. But yes, the opportunity for him, especially at the beginning of the week, has definitely opened up for Torian Prince to be a really useful option. Let's talk monstrous line of the night. I know the Portland fans will be happy with this because Damian Lillard is the monstrous line of the night. Portland fans are people who just always want Lillard or McCollum or whoever the Blazers person is. They just always want them to get the monstrous line of the night. I've never seen... there's no other fan base that is so passionate about their players getting a made-up award than Portland fans. So here you go, Blazers fans. Damian Lillard is the monstrous line of the night. He dropped in 49 points. He had 9 triples. 9 triples, yes. He had 1 rebound and 5 assists. Blocked a shot, went 14 of 21 from the field and a perfect 12 of 12 from the line. Lillard has been the 4th ranked player over the last month. Absolutely crushing it, averaging 31 points, 3.5 triples. Importantly, though, he's been giving you 4.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists, and shooting at 49%, which is obviously ridiculous for a point guard like Lillard, who last year shot 42% from the field and was a punt field goal guy. Now, over the last month, he's actually actively helping you in that category on massive, massive volume. And he's going to the line 7.5 times a game and shooting 93%. So a big, big boost in free throws. So realistically, he's a points, he's a threes, he's a free throws guy, but he's not hurting your field goals. He's definitely an above average assist guy, not a huge assist player, and he's a real drain in terms of steal value. And that's what's always going to keep him from being a consistently top level guy. But if he can keep this efficiency level up, which is absolutely flying at the moment, he's going to be a very important player down the stretch here. Not only for the Blazers, who have won 8 of their last 10 and are really closing in on that 8th seed from the Nuggets, but for fantasy owners who have him at this point of the year and are hoping for big things as your fantasy playoffs progress, because Lillard is doing stuff and scoring at these huge rates without being a drain on your field goal percentage, which can really help maybe get yourself another category and help get the victory going. All right, let's crack on and talk waiver wire line of the night. It goes to Richaun Holmes, Holmesy of the Philadelphia 76ers, 8, 7, and 5 for Richaun. He did move back to the bench in this game with Jahlil Okafor coming back in to start, but Okafor had some knee soreness and that limited his playing time, so Holmesy was great, 8, 7, and 5, but added the defensive numbers, which really kicked it off. 2 steals and 4 blocks for Richaun there. Big numbers. I've said it plenty of times. I think he's the better center on this team. He's better than Okafor. This game actually broke a string of 5 consecutive games of double-digit scoring for Holmesy, so it was one of his better games. But if he actually had have scored the way he had previously, it would have been even better. He has now shot over 50% or 50% or over in 6 consecutive games. He gets pretty decent steal numbers. He's had 7 steals in the last 4 games. He had 4 blocks. He had 2 blocks 2 games ago. He's had a 5-block game a couple of weeks ago. He can get those numbers in pretty big quantities, and he's a top 50 player over the last month, despite playing under 24 minutes a game. With Okafor's knee continuing to give him problems, Holmes is going to be a player that should be owned in the majority of situations. Now, we've seen sometimes when he starts, his minutes are artificially limited by a high foul rate. But if he can get to 30 minutes a night, then it's an absolute no-brainer that he's going to be a top 50 guy. He can score, he can hit threes. His rebounding needs work, but the defensive numbers are brilliant. Over the last month, since the All-Star break, he's averaging 12.5 and 6, half a 3, 1.2 steals, 1.5 blocks, 63% from the field, 72% from the line, and 40% from 3. He is a very, very good player. I've been talking up Holmesy for pretty much 2 years, becoming louder with it this season, and really, really like what's happening. And this extra flare-up with Okafor's knee, we're going to see him playing a considerable role down the stretch without the Sixers having to make a charade of playing Okafor over him. If Okafor's not there, it's going to be all Holmesy, and hopefully he can get 30 minutes in most of those games. It will be tough if Okafor Well, not if I. It would be tough for him to actually stay on the court for that long with his foul trouble. But he is definitely someone that we need to pay a fair bit of attention to here, I think. Let's talk waiver wire. Well, no, we don't. We already talked waiver wire. Let's talk young gun of the night, and it gives me great pleasure to say that it is D'Angelo Russell of the Los Angeles Lakers. Russell was back in the starting lineup after an ill-advised, ill-fated trip to the bench. He was back, not as the starting point guard, as the starting shooting guard alongside Jordan Clarkson. And this is something that I mentioned maybe over the weekend, maybe last week, I don't really recall, talking about you want to try things out. How about you try your two young guards together and see what they can do? Because that was something that Luke Walton had actively avoided. Well, he didn't here. And he went back to Russell at the 2 with Nick Young out due to gastroenteritis. And D'Angelo had a career-high 40 points. He knocked in 7 triples. He had 2 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 steals, and went 14 of 22 from the field. Yes, he was playing the Cavs, but he wasn't guarded by Kyrie. He had Iman Shumpert on him for long stretches of time. So it wasn't a factor of the Kyrie defense allowing him to do this. He played some on the ball, some off the ball, and looked great. And Luke Walton post-game said he will continue with this lineup. So we're going to see Clarkson and Russell starting. Often I'll say it doesn't matter to me if someone starts, but what we've seen with Walton and Russell is when he comes off the bench, he played 26 minutes. When he starts, he can play 34 minutes. That's the difference. It doesn't matter if they start or not in general. If they get the minutes, from a personal point of view, it can often affect the team because of having inferior players playing minutes and affecting lineups and starting and all that sort of stuff. From a personal level, it doesn't make too much difference. But with Russell here, getting back into the lineup is going to give him more minutes. And yeah, this is fantastic stuff. Hopefully you didn't drop him. This is something I did mention, that I think that this sojourn to the bench isn't going to last that long. He'll be back starting pretty quickly. It happened here. I think we're set to go for the rest of the year, and you should be getting, you won't get 40 points tonight, that's pretty clear, but you're going to be getting pretty good numbers from Russell, just as you were getting before the the inexplicable benching of him, as much as Walton might want to explain it. It made absolutely no sense. So we're back in business, and here we go with the second half, or the remainder of the D'Angelo Russell second-year campaign. Let's crack on to the dud of the night. Seth Curry. Man, he has been terrible. 8 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist. The anti-triple 1, 0-3, 0 steals, 0 blocks, 3 of 9 from the field, and 2 of 2 from the line. Now, everyone can see that he's struggling. He struggled for big chunks of the season to begin with, and then had a nice little run in the middle. Everyone is very, very quick to throw it out. JJ Barea's back. He's hurting his value. And on the surface, the correlation makes sense. Barea's been back 6 games. Curry has struggled for 5 in a row. But it's not quite as simple as that. Yes, JJ is back and looking great. JJ is taking a lot of minutes off Yogi Ferrell. The thing that's happening here with Barea and Curry, there's a couple of things. Curry's shot attempt numbers are going down. We've seen that. In the previous 5 games before Barea returned, we saw Curry have 12, 16, 15, 13, and 17 shots. In the 6 games since Barea's been back, Curry's had 11, 8, 8, 10, 4, 9 shots. So only got to double digits twice, and one of those was in the first game that Barea played, when he played just 13 minutes. So the shot attempts are coming down. That was something to be expected. Curry's also someone who doesn't do really anything in any of the other categories. His average is just 2.7 assists, only 2.6 rebounds. He was points and threes, and it was coming on extremely high efficiency, shooting 51% from the field in the last 2 months. But what's really happened in these games, which could be coincidental, it could be representative of the re-addition of Barea to the rotation, is that he can't shoot anymore. In that first game with Barea back, he went 55%, then 13%, 25%, 60%, 50% on only 4 shots, and 33% today. So we have seen a real drop in his efficiency numbers. Over the last week, he's shooting at 42% from the field, which is down from the 51, which was keeping his numbers afloat. And obviously, if you don't hit your shots, your scoring comes down, your 3-pointers come down. So that's 3 categories that have taken a hit from Seth, and that's why he's outside the top 170 over the last 2 weeks. The minutes have still been pretty good. He's still getting minutes. 31 today, 17 in that game against Philly, which doesn't count because everyone was limited. 34 the game before that, 32 the game before that, 33 the game before that. So instead of playing 36 minutes, he went back to 33. It's still decent enough minutes, but that combined with the lack of shot attempts and the percentage falling off, and the fact that he doesn't do much in other areas, if you want to move on from Seth Curry, you do need to consider it. Because this is pretty much the guy that we saw for the first 2-3 months of the season, the guy that struggled along, and now the shooting has regressed. The couple of minutes lost is hurting him. I wouldn't say he's an automatic drop, and it's not all 100% to do with Barea, because if he was coming in and still shooting at 50% in every one of these games, instead of 8 points, he'd have 12 points. Instead of 7 points, he'd have 11 points. Instead of 5 points, he'd have 12 points, or whatever it may be. Those numbers would look a lot sexier and a lot more Seth Curry-ish. They wouldn't quite be the same as where they were, but they also wouldn't be as terrible as they are now. But you need to make tough decisions at this point. So if Seth is someone you need to get rid of and you just can't wait for the shooting to click back in, or if you're convinced that it's Barea related, then get rid of him. He doesn't do enough in enough categories for me to consider him an absolute lock guy that you just can't get rid of under any circumstance. I don't think that's the way you should be looking at Seth Curry. All right, that does it for all the nightly awards. Let's move in now and talk about these games in a little bit more details. Let's go to the first one, and that is Dallas and Brooklyn. Yogi Ferrell. The minutes are coming down for Yogi. 22 minutes. I've been off him for a while. 8, 2, and 5. So you still like the 5 assists, you like the 3 steals, you like the block, but the minutes are coming down. Barea's minutes are going up, and that's impacting what Ferrell can do in 10-team leagues. Just get rid of him. In 12-team leagues, pick and choose where you would use him. You need those point guard stats desperately, maybe, but the downward trend is definitely happening, as well as I said, opposition teams really starting to figure out what Yogi can do. As for JJ Barea, his second big game in a row, 27 minutes for JJ, 20 points, 7 assists, and 2 steals on 67% shooting. Fluky shooting, to be sure, but that's 20 assists in the last 2 games for Barea. The minutes are coming up. He's not a 12-team league guy yet, but he definitely does have some streamability. There's no doubt about that you can use him as a streaming guy, because on any given night he can provide good scoring, good assists. He can hit some threes as well, and we're seeing his role definitely jump up. But far from a guy that you want to go and grab initially. He doesn't even play on Monday. Then they take on the Warriors on Tuesday, so not looking like a necessarily great scenario for Barea or the rest of the Mavs. But Yogi, you can consider getting rid of him in most cases. The pencil had 19 and 6 in his 36 minutes. Wes Matthews, 15 points in 36, just a 3-point streamer really well. Nerlens Noel, he did not take a single shot in 21 minutes. He had 4 boards, a steal, and a block. I don't think there's any need to really hold on to Nerlens in 10s or 12-team leagues. It just doesn't appear like they're going to go back to him and start him. Like shit, they did it one game and he had 17 rebounds and defensive numbers and scoring, and he looked great. And then Carlos said, nah, let's just put you back in a minimal role. Yes, his knees are hurting, so that's part of that. But Nerlens doesn't need to be owned in leagues moving forward. Dirk had 23 and 9, a solid night from him. For the Nets, Jeremy Lin, sprained ankle, first quarter. Not great from Lin. He'd been putting up great numbers. He'd been really, really solid. We don't have any further information on this from Lin, but you would have to imagine that he will miss time because of this injury. So delay your decision to drop him as much as you can until we hear the news. We don't know what that is now, but they don't play Monday, so you might not get an update on Monday. So have a look. Can you afford to hold Jezza until Tuesday? At least it does give him one more day to recover, and then if he is back on Tuesday, then it can work out well. It also depends on who would you be adding in. Is there someone great out there that you're going to get fantastic use of to start the week? Will that work in your favor? All these decisions need to be made, but I wouldn't be just immediately dropping him now. I would like to hear some information about this injury, to hear what they say, to see if there's going to be missed time. We've seen guys sprain ankles. Jim Harden, John Wall, they sprain their ankle, come back the same game, don't miss a game. Lin didn't return, but it doesn't mean that he's out for a long period of time. It probably does indicate to me that he will miss some time, but that's not 100% guaranteed. And unless I'm adding someone who I feel pretty good about, I'm not just rushing to rushing to drop Lin based on this, if the add I make is only going to be borderline valuable anyway. It all comes down to individual preferences or the way your team is individually set up. Maybe that's a more accurate way of putting it. Spencer Dinwiddie, in Lynn's absence, played 30 minutes. He had 18, 2 and 7. He was starting to put together some decent performances with Lynn out. I thought he had separated himself from Isaiah Whitehead. It doesn't mean that you need to grab him, but if Lynn does miss time, then he can be a streaming option for some assists and points, but more just an 18-team sort of ad guy, or maybe even 20-teamers. Randy Foy continues to get an unconscionable amount of minutes. 28 minutes, 11 and 6 with a 3 and 2 assists there. I just don't understand it. Rondo Hollis-Jefferson, 30 minutes. That's great. Great to see that. 6 and 9 with a block is not great, but the minutes are. The problem is that probably means 18 minutes in the next game. We cannot rely upon Kenny Atkinson to give Rondé big enough minutes to make him a viable must-own player. Karis LeVert, speaking of not viable must-own players, 5 and 5 in 25 minutes, and those minutes just continue to be a real prick for him again. That was without Joe Harris, it was without Trevor Booker, and it was without sexy boy Sean Kilpatrick. Plenty of guards out, but LeVert still just plugging along at the 25 minutes a game. Brookie Lopez had 27 and 7 with 3 triples. No other numbers, but still a pretty decent night from Lopez there. Let's move on to Boston and Philadelphia. No Isaiah Thomas, so the Celtics go down to the Philadelphia 76ers. No, this does not mean Isaiah Thomas should be in the MVP conversation, but the Celtics desperately need him. With Thomas out, Al Horford was more aggressive offensively. He took the most shots on the team, 16 of them, hit 11, and had 27, 8 and 6 for a 3, a steal, and 2 blocks. So I guess Al Horford owners will be pretty rapt that Isaiah Thomas sat this one out because they got a more aggressive and a more stat-stuffing version of Al Horford. Terry Rozier also stepped up. He had 14 and 10. He's a very aggressive rebounder for a point guard. Can really help you in that area as opposed to average at that position. He played 26 minutes, but obviously if Thomas is back for Monday, you're not going to see too much of Rozier moving forward. Avery Bradley, 13, 3 and 2, has not stepped up his game in these 2 games against Brooklyn and Philadelphia without Thomas, and I thought he would. It didn't happen, while Marcus Smart, very, very Marcus Smart here, 3 of 12 from the field, 25% shooting for 8 points, but 6 boards, 8 assists, 2 steals, really getting the job done in those other categories. But when Isaiah comes back, his minutes will go from 35 to 27, and then those peripheral numbers just won't be high enough to make him a must-own guy, even in punt field goal situations. Jaylen Brown has dropped off significantly. His value is probably even evaporating out of 20-team leagues with the way that he is going at the current time, while Jay Crowder was fine without being great. 15, 7 and 4. The 23% shooting is obviously a little bit harmful. Onto the Sixers, I talked about it before, but I'll mention it again. Jelly Okafor started. He played 12 minutes and went off with knee soreness. Will this keep him out of action? I would have to think he misses at least a game due to this. I don't think there's any reason to hold Okafor in any 12-team leagues. His value was really on the border anyway, so if you got him, now that is a guy that I would move on from, even without knowing the injury status, because the drop-off you're going to get between him and a waiver wire guy is probably not going to be that high. Timothé Luwawu-Cabarrot played 29 minutes in another start. That is 29 minutes in 2 consecutive games for TLC. He had 13 points with 3 triples, 2 rebounds, and an assist. And while I love the minutes and I love the consistency of playing time, it's not necessarily going to turn into making him a 12-team league must-own guy. Spanish Chocolate had 7 assists in 20 minutes, and his minutes have just peaked up a little bit recently. A nice assist stream, maybe for 14 teamers, but it can happen if you get desperate towards the end of a week. While TJ McConnell had 28 minutes, 6, 3 and 7, so he's still helping you in that assist column. Dario Saric bounced back, 23, 6 and 4 with a pair of steals and a pair of threes, while Bob Cove had 16 and 8 with 2 threes and 2 steals. So just more of the same for most of the Sixers guys. Let's talk Phoenix. They took on the Detroit Pistons, and Jesus Christ, this game, the Suns were not only without Eric Bledsoe, Tyson Chandler, Brandon Knight, they were without Devin Booker, they were without Leandro Barbosa, they were without Ron Price. So just every guard basically in their lineup was out. We had Derek Jones Jr. starting at the 2 alongside Tyler Ulis, and Tyler Ulis just took this to me. Mate, I'm taking every shot I can. He took 24 shots. He played 43 minutes, went 17, 3 and 11, had 3 steals. Horrific efficiency, 29% from the field, but big counting numbers, and he should be owned everywhere, which is fairly obvious, I would say. TJ Warren also massive minutes, 45 minutes for Tej, 15 and 6, 3 steals, 2 blocks. His efficiency wasn't there, only at 38% shooting, but we're well aware he needs to be owned. Alan Williams just stuck in the 26-minute zone, continually going to be there, but continually produces, so it doesn't really matter. 11 and 12 on only 36% shooting, so it could have been much better. 2 steals, 1 block. Minutes are capped, but production is fine. Own him. Recently signed Jarrell Eddy. This is how desperate the Suns were. Jarrell Eddy just signed. Many of you have never heard of Jarrell Eddy. He played 29 minutes and scored 13 points. Once Barbosa and Booker and Price to a lesser degree come back, I don't think we're going to see a huge amount of Eddy, and not enough for him to be a huge contributor or anything like that moving forward. Where are we? Who else on this team we need to talk about? Let's talk Marquese Chriss. Still just the 26 minutes for Chriss because he can't keep out of his own way. Foul trouble once more for him. 16 and 7 with a steal and a 3. He probably should be owned. Well, not probably. He should be owned in most leagues. The Suns don't play again till Tuesday this week. But yeah, he should be owned. He is pushing 30 most games. It doesn't get there because he can't keep himself out of foul trouble. But the stats are coming. Doesn't mean he's a good player. I think he's learning, he's improving, but he's still got a very long way to go. But the stats are still coming. 11 and 7 for Alex Len, also not a standard league guy. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope talked about it yesterday that we've been waiting a while for this guy to put up a good game. Normally he's inconsistent. That's a pretty standard thing for him. But it had been so long since we've got a good performance out of him. So he'd been consistent, just consistently bad, but he was the good one. 23, 3 and 8, 5 triples, 57% shooting for KCP. Big numbers there, but you're relying upon him is a pretty tough ask. 16 and 5 for Marcus Morris, while Reggie Jackson played 25 minutes and had 14, 2 and 4, while Ish Smith played 23 and went 6, 3 and 6. I still prefer Reggie. I still think that he should be owned in 12-team leagues, but this was one of those minute split games. Andre Drummond had 18 and 18 with 2 blocks, terrible from the free throw line, and that enabled Aaron Baines to get in there and set a career high with 17 rebounds. Big men absolutely dominate the Suns. We've seen it plenty of times. And here, Drummond and Baines together, 35 rebounds. It's a lot of rebounds. Not much to really see with Baines, though, moving forward. The tackle box, John Lua had 10 and 7 in his 24. He's more a 16-teamer, while Toby Harris, just a terrible shooting night. 2 of 10 from the field for Tobe, 8 and 4 in his 34 minutes. But I look at that and say he played 34 minutes. And the tackle box played just 24, and that's the sort of minute split that we should be looking at going forward for Detroit. Indiana and Toronto, the Pacers got smoked by the Raptors, so we got limited minutes from a number of Indiana players. Jeff Teague, my name is Jeff. 16, 2 and 7 in 27 minutes for Teague, a 3 and a steal, 36% shooting, while Thaddeus Young. Now, this is something I did mention yesterday, that when Lavoy Allen plays, he's going to see his minutes reduced, and that happened. He played just 26, but I think what we should be encouraged by is the fact that he hit his first 3 since returning from the wrist injury. He scored 16 points and went 7 of 9 from the field. Now, obviously, wrist injury or not, 78% shooting is not going to continue to happen. I don't think this is necessarily Thad turning it around, but the fact that he's been able to play more minutes and be a little bit more productive lately has been fine. He is absolutely fine to own. He's absolutely fine to leave on the wire. He's just one of those guys that's in that morass of 30, 40 players that can be interchanged on and off rosters at the moment. His real value is just going to come from steals, and I wouldn't be expecting this sort of offensive production from him on a nightly basis. Paulie George had 18, 4 and 2, a pretty decent night there, while Lavoy Allen in his return, just the 2 points, nothing to care about there. CJ Miles, speaking of nothing to care about, 8 points with 2 triples in 23 minutes, while Miles Turner, man, he is struggling. 3, 5 and 3 for Turner, no steals, no blocks, 1 of 4 from the field. If your Dynasty League still allows trading, this is the best time to try and get Turner. You might not be able to get him super cheap, but I think you're going to get him at a mildly suppressed value, especially if he is on a team that is still competing in the playoffs, and they're like, man, what's going on with this guy? I want to push for a victory. Maybe you get him at a discount. It has been like a month or so of just shitfulness from Miles Turner. I know he will turn it around, but it's been definitely concerning, and that's where you got to make your move, or an aggressive attempt at least to try and get him. For the Raptors, Corey Joseph, 11, 4 and 9 with a 111 in 31 minutes. A nice, solid performance from a nice, solid player. That's all I can really say about Corey Joseph. 12 and 6 for Damari Carroll with 4 triples. He had barely hit a 3 in the last couple of weeks and hit 4 of them here, so chalk that one up to a bit of arsiness. I would leave him out of the conversation for 12 teamers, while Serge Ibaka bounced back for 16 and 5. Jonas Valanciunas, 24 minutes. Dominant early. Still doesn't play in the fourth quarter, 11 and 13 with a block. The minutes cap continues to be a complete frustration, and I don't really care too much about the fact that he doesn't play in the fourth quarter. I just think they should use him a lot more during the other parts of the game, especially when he was as dominant as he was against the Pacers. Get him out there, roll him out there, play 28 minutes in three quarters, get him 22 points and 14 rebounds, block a couple of shots, and really start putting the other teams to the sword, especially when he's got their balls in his hands and he's really just twisting and wrenching, as he was doing early in this game. In terms of owning him, it's incredibly frustrating. And that sort of number is good. The 13 rebounds is good, but there's a real cap on it. And if something doesn't go 100% correct, he doesn't have much room to improve. DeMar DeRozan had 22, 3, and 4 in 29 minutes there. While Jakob Poeltl, career night for Poeltl, 23 minutes, 12 and 7, a steal and 2 blocks. He's looking a lot better. He's taken Bebe out of the rotation completely, although he played 5 minutes here in garbage time. But Poeltl is the backup now. He's not really going to impact too many fantasy leagues, but the way that they're increasing what Poeltl can do and the way he's responding, you would have to think at some point that, or maybe not some point in the off season, that a Valanciunas trade could be coming, and they can go over obviously a Barker in the fourth, and run Poeltl out there as a starting center. That is a possibility. So he's a name to watch for dynasty leagues, no doubt. Norm Powell, 11 points in only 14 minutes, continues to be underused. Portland and Miami, talked about Dame. Let's talk CJ. He had 18, 5 and 5 with 2 threes. Wasn't quite as efficient as what he'd been the previous 2 games, but still a pretty bloody good performance. Speaking of pretty bloody good, Noah Vonleh. I've been pretty harsh on Noah Vonleh for the last couple of seasons, and that's because he hasn't been an NBA player for 2 years, 2.5 years. He looks good. He has turned it around. He looks, and it is a very small sample size, so let's not get too over the top, but he looks a lot better now, and he looks like that when he's on the court that it's not an absolute disaster. He's playing well in a winning team. He played 29 minutes here, had 11 and 7. He's pretty much eliminating Myers Leonard from the rotation. He's reducing what Al-Farouq Aminu can do. And Vonleh, while not being a 12-team league guy, he's a fine streaming guy. If the situation calls for it and you need some big man numbers, Portland play 4 games this week. You can get Tuesday, Thursday action out of him, and you could chuck him in on a Saturday as well. All that stuff, that could work. He's rebounding at a high rate. He's scoring much better. Good to see him turning around. Really, at this point, if I'm adding him, it's probably just a 16-team league scenario, but let's just keep an eye on it because the minutes are definitely pushing up. That's 4 games in a row of at least 22 minutes, and the last 2 have been pushing up towards 30. Yusuf Nurkic had 21 and 12 with 3 blocks, a good night there, while Mo Harkless, the weirdness continues. Evan Turner's back, so that means let's play Mo Harkless more than when he was out. I don't know. 29 minutes for Mo, 2 and 5 with 2 blocks. I don't care that the minutes are back up. I don't think you need to be dealing with him in 12s. Same with Al-Farouq Aminu, who had 3 and 5 in 23 minutes. The Miami Heat.
Two for two.
Yes, Jimmy, our only son. Not only was he a monster as he normally is, 24, 7 and 5, he chucked in the good old Richie Beno there as well.
2 for two.
He had 2 threes, he had 2 steals, he had 2 blocks, and he continues to be an absolute stat-stuffing beast. And 69% from the field, and 80% from the line. Really, it doesn't get much better than that from Johnson. He was right up there in terms of monstrous line of the night discussions. With Dion Waiters out, I think it actually does help James a little bit because we just see less of the minutes being sort of pushed around into other spots. With the plethora of guards, we don't see more of those, Waiters at the 3 or Allington at the 3 lineups, or Richardson, and it does open up some minutes for him, or some extra minutes, which he should have been getting regardless, but really looking for a strong finish here for Jim. Hassan Whiteside continues to be really good at this point of the year, 17 and 10 with 3 blocks for Whiteside. While it wasn't Goran Dragic's best night, especially efficiency, which is something that he hangs his fantasy hat on, 27% on 22 attempts is nightmarish. 17, 4 and 3 with 3 steals is pretty good. So there's pros and cons there. Joshie Richardson started with Dion Waiters out, and Waiters is not going to be back. Now he hopes he can be back for the end of the regular season. It's not good. He goes, I've never felt this much pain since I fractured my ankle. This is worse than the ankle sprain I had last time, which kept him out weeks. You're not seeing him for the next 3 weeks. At least Dion Waiters, maybe a month. Just get rid of him. He is done. He is toast. Finish him off. Joshy Richardson, 33 minutes, 10, 1 and 2 with a 1-1 there for Richo. Now, Spoelstra did say he won't commit to using this same starting lineup with Richardson there. Initially, it was going to be Wayno Allington, but they pulled the Duke out at the last minute and put Josh in there. I don't think I want to add. I like Josh Richardson. I'm not adding him at this point. He just hasn't produced apart from about a 3-game sample in January, and there are going to be other options out there. I'd rather play for my categorical needs than use him. Tyler Johnson, 14, 3 and 3, the 31 minutes. That also helps him with Dion out also. Wayne Ellington, really a pretty decent 3-point streamer. Only scored 9 points, but they were all from threes, and that's exactly what you want as a 3-point streamer. And the availability of a guy like that is why you shouldn't be holding on to guys whose value is rooted in 3-pointers. Wes Matthews, he's a 3-point guy. So holding on to guys like that when you could be streaming that spot for what you need, and then when it comes down to threes, oh shit, someone grab Wes Matthews. Doesn't matter, the Duke's there. Go and grab Wayne Ellington, and then he gives you 3 triples. There are guys like this all over the place. You could add friggin' Lukey Babbitt in a deeper league and hope he gives you 2 threes. There are guys like this all over without having to anchor down a roster spot, hoping a guy gets you 2 threes. There are guys all over the place that can come out and hit these 3-pointers for you. A couple of questions come in. There's Joel Kalane says, Skal or Mirotic for this week? I have to go Mirotic. I think, yes, it was a shit show last game, but I still have faith in him. He does have the higher fantasy ceiling than what Labissiere has. Plus, it's 4 games versus 3. It's very hard to argue that in the reverse there, Joel. So that would be the way I would go. Now, Joel, I don't know. Are you Australian or are you American? Because if you're American, maybe it's pronounced Joel. Over here, we'll go with Joel. Where are we? Minnesota and the New Orleans Pelicans. Gorgie Jeng, 9 and 10, 2 steals and 2 blocks. 9 points is terrible, but everything else pretty good, especially after he was 0 of 7 from the field in the last game, so we got to see obviously some more impressive numbers from Jeng. Without Nemanja Bjelica around, it should stabilize him somewhat, but the Timberwolves are going to be signing Omri Caspi, and maybe that signing takes a little bit away from Gorgie. It also is going to take something away from Shabazz Muhammad. Now, Shabazz played 24 minutes here and had 20 points with 6 rebounds. Exactly what I said he can do. He can give you points, and he can give them to you on high efficiency. But if instead of playing 28 minutes, he plays 22 minutes, then the appeal really lessens, and the limited minutes could come about by Caspi coming in and providing some really interesting spacing options at the 3 and the 4. Wigo had an efficient night, which is something he'd lacked for a while. 25, 2 and 2, added 2 steals, but the 53% is what really got it done. While Rick Rubio, the shooting dropped off, but when Rick Rubio's shooting drops off and it only goes to 40%, that's a win. 10, 3 and 14 for Ravishing One. 2 triples and a steal for Rubio, while Townsy had 33, 6 and 2 with 4 triples. Some good numbers there for him. And Brandon Rush played 39 minutes and put up 6 points. Yeah, he's not going to do a lot. Joel says he's Canadian. So Joel, is it Joel or is it Joel? Which way are you going? I don't know. I don't know pronunciations. The other one that throws me off with American, maybe it's North American pronunciations, is the name Craig. We call it Craig and you guys call it Craig. I remember the first time I heard it, are they saying Greg? Or are they saying Craig? Oh, it's Craig. We definitely give the Australian extended A. Craig. All right, enough of that. Let's talk about the Pelicans. Tone Davis, 26 and 12 with 3 assists. Yeah, that's fine. That's nothing spectacular, but it's fine. While Boogie had 15, 11 and 4 with 3 steals. And shit, Drew Holiday actually shot the ball well with everyone there. 21, 3 and 7, 4 triples and a steal. Amazing stuff. So look, at least he's got it in him to continue to do that. You want to talk amazing performances? I said yesterday if Solomon Hill gets to 50 DraftKings points, I would sing on the air. He did his best. He listened to the podcast. He had 13, 5 and 5, had 2 threes and 3 steals. Shot 50% from the field. And this is the exact stuff that got Solomon Hill this 4-year, $48 million contract. What he did in the last month for the Pacers and in the playoffs last year. Became this guy that contributed on both ends of the court. Became a knockdown shooter, an accurate scorer, a guy that can provide balls out defense. And then he's just been missing for the entirety of this season. He's a name to watch in these fantasy playoffs because a 13-5-5-3 steal line, that works. That works on all 12-10 leagues. Now, I honestly have no faith in it, but it works. It's 2 in a row. Geordie Crawford also went bananas. 22 points in 21 minutes. He hit 4 triples. He did nothing else, but like I talked about before, you want threes. Geordie Crawford's around, he's not afraid. He's going to shoot him, and they will go in occasionally. So that's where those threes values can come from. They did start Timmy Frazier with Wayne Selden now in Memphis. He played 23 minutes and had 3 points, but he had 8 assists. So that's very sexy there as an assist streamer if they continue to start him. They also recently brought in Quinn Cook on another 10-day deal. So he played just the 1 minute here in junk time. So we'll see how that moves moving forward. The Sacramento Kings and the San Antonio Spurs, well, amazing. I know you're going to be shocked by this, but the Kings started the exact same 5 people for 2 consecutive games. They also had the exact same players out for 2 consecutive games. Aaron Aflalo and Ben McLemore remained out due to personal issues, and Tyreek Evans remained out with his ankle problem. Now, I'm expecting that to hold for 3 consecutive games. Maybe he's pushing it a little bit, but it was a step in the right direction for consistency. Bud Hield played 32 and had 18, 5, and 5. The 5 assists are great. The 57% shooting is fantastic, but Bud's one of those guys that I just put as a 3-point streamer type of a player. Darren Collison was terrible, 2 points in 24 minutes. Ty Lawson had 7 points with 6 assists in 21 minutes, meaning that there was 5 minutes at least in this game where that neither of those guys were on the court running Garrett Temple at point guard. Unsurprisingly, the Kings lost. Collison is still a guy that you probably should hold in most situations, but say Rajon Rondo was out there and you need assists, like you grab Rondo over Collison, I would have no hesitation in doing that. Scalabissiere, ridiculously efficient, 7 of 9 from the field, 14.7 boards, 23 minutes. But that's the worry with Scal. We saw that one big game against Phoenix where he played 29 minutes and scored, huge amounts of points. But then after that, the minutes have been muted. The other issue that's complicating Labissiere's performance is the fact that they've got 3 young bigs. Him, Cauley Stein, and George Papianis. And I'm going with George because apparently that's what the announcers call him, and apparently that's what he's been asked to go by in Sacramento now, making it easy, just auto-anglicizing his name. I'd prefer that he stick with Georgios, but if he's going to go with George, I'll call him George. Maybe we should just anglicize everyone's name. John Antetokounmpo, Joe Nurkic, Nicholas Jokic. Who else can we throw in there? I'm sure I'll find another one. But George Papianis, 24 minutes, 6 and 10 with a steal and a block. Now, he's not coming into consideration to own in 12s or 14-team leagues, but it is going to limit what Labissiere can do. They did play some Labissiere, Cauley Stein, and Papianis lineups together, which was very interesting to see those 3 guys and Scal playing at the 3, a 7-footer playing at the 3, Kevin Durant style. That's not going to work for massive amounts of minutes in a row. Coming back to it, so Scal is not a must-own guy. He, as I said before, that the Kings have only got the 3 games this week, and he doesn't play again till Wednesday. So adding him now serves absolutely no purpose. In a weekly league, there's no point with 3 games. In a daily changes league, adding him now, what's the purpose? You've got 2 games of zeros for a guy that's going to play 23 minutes majority of the time. That's not really a good use of your resources. So while I like what Scal can do, there's a little bit of a cap on his performance. 18, 4, and 5 for Will Cauley Stein, while Garrett Temple had 15 points in his 26, more just a deeper league sort of a player. Costa Koufos just the 15 minutes. I think we're going to see Costa's minutes come down as Papianis and Scal, start to get more comfortable. Onto the Spurs, they didn't need to really exert themselves too much. So that's why you see LaMarcus Aldridge playing 22 minutes, scoring 18 points, Tone Parker returning and having 16, 3, and 7 in 20 minutes, while Kawhi was terrible. 12, 2, and 3, and 26 for Kawhi on 25% shooting. That's not something that will that will happen all that often. Trevor Evans throws in here, we'll anglicize Goran Dragic, we'll call him Gordon. Gordo Dragic. Big Gordon. Yeah, I enjoy that, Trevor. That's good. Gordon Dragic. The Spurs, there's not much to read into the Spurs, except for some of the comments from Greg Popovich earlier in the game, that he wants to give, and he singled out Pat Mills and Danny Green, give those guys some rest moving forward. So we saw Mills play just 18 minutes here, Green played just 20 minutes. It was a good opportunity to rest them, but there'll be games where those minutes do come down. Not that they're 12-team league guys anyway, but it is worth bearing in mind. Manu rested this game. John Simmons played 27 and had 10 points with 2 triples, but he is just a deeper league sort of player. Let's move on to the last game of the night, the Cavs and the Lakers. Kyrie was back, and he was back in a big way. 46 points on 71% shooting, just stupid. 6 triples, 2 rebounds, 3 assists. He might be a horrendous defender, but he is so fun to watch. Just watching him just take shots and they go in and which is obviously the name of the game in basketball. But watching him do it, I don't know, there's just an extra level of excitement. LeBron had 34, 6, and 7, and Kevin Love, 26 minutes for Lovey. He was back, 21 and 15. Now, you couldn't have asked for a better matchup than the Lakers. We don't know if minutes restrictions will continue for Love moving forward, or if the back-to-back restrictions will continue, or how long they'll continue for. But this is obviously an encouraging performance that is improved upon by the opposition. Now, the Cavs don't play again till Wednesday, and they've only got 3 games this week, but his matchups are against Denver and Charlotte, so even in limited minutes, Love should be able to put together some pretty tasty stat lines in those games. Tristan Thompson copped an elbow in the mouth. He was unable to return, 4 points and 10 boards for Tomo, and not much else happening for Cleveland. J.R. Smith, dreadful as usual, 2 points in 27 minutes. No need to own him, or Shumpert, or Darren Williams, or Channing Frye outside of very deep formats. On the Lakers, Brandon Ingram, another impressive performance, 18 and 6 with a block. I think he should be owned in 12-team leagues at the moment. I said it. He hasn't been, well, no, he's been terrible for the majority of the season. Not terrible at the moment. So really some good stuff there from Brando, putting it together. The shooting coming in now, contributing in other areas, more aggressive, 40 minutes. He was great. Ivica Zubats, only the 19 minutes here as the Lakers decided to go small a lot of the time with Julius Randle at center, but 10 and 6, 2 assists and a block in only 19 minutes. I'm absolutely fine with still holding that, because that's down, so that's floor. Like, you get up to ceiling, you're talking 18 and 9 sort of numbers, which are obviously fantastic. Jordy Clarkson had 19, 3 and 6 in his 41 minutes. They're going to run this Clarkson-Russell partnership, as they should, for big minutes, and that's encouraging if you own any of those guys. As for Julius Randle, he had 10, 7 and 7, so some nice assist numbers there, but overall wasn't a great game from Julius, while Larry Nance, just the 5 points in 14 minutes for Nancy, and didn't get a steal, and that's really where all his value came from. And Bobby Jimmy throws in, I should be calling Ivica Zubac Johnny Zubac. John Zubats. Yeah, that works. Now, I assume that Ivica, we're going like the Ivan from Russian, and that's where we get the John. I'm not sure that Ivica exactly goes to John, but Ivica Zubats, John Zubats takes on John Antetokounmpo in a battle of the young guns. Let's fully just anglicize this. All right. That does it for all the games from Sunday. I'm going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be back to transition into preview mode and talk about all of Monday's games.
Every time I think I see your face, it reminds me of a time and place. She gets me down. Loneliness is a time and space. I feel a hard and sweet embrace. It's all around. She never gets me down. She always keeps my feet flat on the ground. Never gets me down. Every time I start thinking about you, my world just revolves around you. Everything I keep inside.
All right, let's look at the perfect FanDuel lineups. Dame Lillard 56.7, D'Angelo at 54.4, Jordy Crawford 22.4, and Bud Hield at 33.5. Shabazz had 29.7, and LeBron had 48.7 at power forward. Jimmy Johnson had 47.9, and Kevin Love at 38. And at center, Yusuf Nurkic at 41.4 for a total of 372.7, and that cost $59,900. DraftKings, Dame Lillard 62.75, Bud Hield 34.75, Solly Hill, he had 33.25 points there, Kev Love 42.25, Powell at 37.75, Kyrie 54.5, Jim Johnson 49.25, and D'Angelo at 58.5 for a total of 373, and that cost $49,800. Just a question come in here from Bobby, just clarifying his Ivica Zubats translation to John, so thank you for that, Bob. And Trevor's got a question. Dwayne Wade just got dropped. He got dropped in his 14-team Dynasty League. Is he an automatic pickup for next year? I'm finally in win now mode after 6 years in the league. I guess it depends on who you drop. I can totally understand that, because he's probably going to be able to produce top 100 value for another season. But who are you? You're not looking at awesome stuff from Wade. The decline continues with him. Like, he's been pretty good this year, but if you are in win now mode, then if you're dropping some sort of fringe prospecty type player, then it probably does make sense to do that, Trev. All right, let's move into these games. There are 7 on Monday. The first one of those is the Atlanta Hawks. They are taking on the Charlotte Hornets. The Hornets are favored by 6. Remember that the Hawks are without Paul Millsap. They're without Kent Bazemore, which is actually probably a positive at this point, but it is a change to their rotation that we're going to have to take into consideration. Let's talk about point guards here. Both these teams have been very friendly to opposition point guards throughout the season. So Dennis Schroeder at 7,200. If you have some faith in him, then he can easily exceed that value. I wouldn't be trusting it in cash, but there is obviously upside there. And you can say the same thing for Kemba Walker, who's an $8,000 player on FanDuel. The respective matchups of both of these point guards are real tasty, so I could even consider stacking them in a tournament lineup, because if one goes off, much like we saw Kyrie and D'Angelo and even Jordan Clarkson to a lesser degree have some pretty big games against each other today, Schroeder and Walker could both have pretty significant performances going up against each other, so that's something to watch and definitely becomes I think a viable strategy in GPPs. At shooting guard, Nicola Batum is at 7,100. He's averaging 34 over the last 5. He just feels like he's just a little bit under where that needs to be. Unfortunately, the matchup is a good one for him. I think he's definitely worth a stream there. Also, someone you can take a look at. Not a stream, just as a GPP flyer type of a guy. As for Timmy Hardaway, he's at 5,600. I think he gets somewhat of a boost with Bazemore out also. His numbers have been fairly good recently, a 28-point average over the last 3. I've got no problem with deploying him in cash and in GPPs. I think there's a lot of value there. While Jeremy Lamb, his value has nosedived since Batum has returned. I think you have to love Taurean Prince here. He is at 3,700. He's already averaging 20 points over the last 3, and now with 2 players out that were playing in front of him in Bazemore and Millsap, he's got that opportunity at less than $4,000 to go over 20 once more. He won't block as many shots as he did, but he should still be able to put up good numbers, so I really like Taurean Prince here. Tarbo's another guy, but his ability to put up numbers is obviously limited by his offensive limitations. He would be a GPP option, but if I'm taking one of these Hawks wings for $100 more, I would take Taurean Prince over Tarbo. Kid Gilchrist, Bellinelli, not much to really care about. And DeAndre Bembry has been recalled from the D-League for this game. We don't know if Mike Dunleavy will play as well. So there's a couple of other wings there who could get in on the action, but I don't think they're going to see enough minutes to really be consistent players or guys who are going to put up numbers that are worthy for DFS tournaments. Let's go to power forward. Ersan Ilyasova is in a great spot. 4,500 is a very good price. 5,000 on DraftKings is great. I would imagine he continues to start in place of Millsap, and I think that you could consider him pretty much a core guy for cash and even for tournaments on both DraftKings and FanDuel. Really hard to go past him. Frank the Tank at 56, just not enough minutes there. While Marv Williams, that price is too high. 6,700 for Marv. His numbers have been good, but they're not quite, and they're not quite high enough, and I don't have confidence that he's going to be able to exceed that on a regular basis. So that's not for me. Cody Zeller at 5,200 was a monster in the last game, but against Dwight Howard, I don't know if I feel the same level of confidence as what I should. So that's a no. While 6,800 for Dwight, I think it's a good opportunity here for Dwight, but given how little he is touching the ball, I'd look at him more as a tournament play, just in case some extra shots come his way and he really starts doing stuff defensively. But I think he's got a good opportunity here in this matchup against Charlotte to put up some pretty impressive numbers. All right, let's move on to the next game. Where are we? We have got the Utah Jazz taking on the Indiana Pacers. The Jazz are favored by 3, and the total is 193 points here. We don't know if the Rocket is playing Rodney Hood, who's missed the last couple with right knee soreness. We don't know Derek Favors, whether he is going to play, who has missed the last few. He was supposed to be reevaluated at the end of the week. We haven't really heard any more information from there, so he could be out. Obviously, if Rocket is out, then Joe Ingles gets a boost. If Favors is out, then it becomes Joe Johnson who gets that boost. So they're situations we need to monitor and see how it all pans out in the end. Let's talk about the point guards here. Jeff Teague at 6,600 has struggled, but he has done well when going up against Utah in the past, so I wouldn't hate putting a flyer on him as a GPP. That's about it. While Georgie Hill at 6,100, yep, I'm in for this for George Hill here. He had 45 points the last time he took on his former team. I like this here. It's not a lock by any stretch. It's not a core play, but I think there is cash value there, and there's definitely GPP upside in George Hill in this sort of a spot, and not just revenge factor, the fact that Jeff Teague's just not a good defender. Shooting guards, Rocket Rodney Stuckey, no. Monte Ellis, no. Rocket Rodney Hood, the battle of the Rodneys, no thanks. At small forward, Paul George, 8,100. Apart from today, he'd been putting up some pretty consistent numbers. It is not a good matchup for Paul George. It's also not a good day for small forwards on FanDuel. So you might be just have cash left over and go, man, I just hate these small forwards. I can't trust any of them. So going with George in a cash scenario might be one of the more trustworthy situations you're in. He's at 8,000 on DraftKings as well. So consider him. CJ Miles, there's upside, but it doesn't come through all that often. 7,600 for Gordo Hayward and 6,900 on DraftKings. So I really like the 69 on DraftKings.
Giggity.
There is something there. He's averaging 35 over the last three, and at that sort of a price tag, that's a pretty decent level of production from Gordo. Jiggle and Joe Ingles at 4,200. Yeah, if Rocket is out, if Hood plays, Ingles will still get high 20s in minutes because Hood won't come back and play 30, I wouldn't have thought, after missing the last few with that knee issue, so that's going to allow Ingles to play more. But there's a difference between Ingles at 27 minutes and Ingles at 35 minutes, and I want Ingles at 35 minutes if I'm going to be using him. Joe Johnson also, he's a sub $4,000 player who could start and could get 23, 24 minutes, which is not a bad way if you want to put some other high-priced players in. Thaddeus Young is at 4,600, a nice game from him today, but honestly, it wasn't brilliant. 23 points is fine, but it's not spectacularly sexy, and this matchup is a disaster against the Jazz. So yeah, I would only look at Thad as a GPP guy, despite it looking marginally appealing, especially on DraftKings where he comes at 4,200 and you go, all right, this starts to look good, but this matchup could be an issue for Thad, so I would be leaning more towards GPPs for him. At centre, Rudy Gobert, 7,900. Great opportunity for Gobert here. I do really like this spot for him. 72 on DraftKings as well, whereas Miles Turner, just completely forget that. No chance. Not against Gobert, and not even at 5,300 on DraftKings. I just don't see it. It could easily happen. I just don't see it happening. Gobert has swallowed up plenty of players who are better than Miles Turner so far this season. All right, let's move on to the next one. Philadelphia taking on the Orlando Magic, the Dario Saric Bowl. We have got the Magic favored by 5, and the total is 211 points here. We don't know the status of Jahlil Okafor. Obviously, if Okafor is out, then Richaun Holmes' value gets a significant bump. I think he's a pretty good value play anyway, but he goes up in my estimations if Jahlil is out, which I would imagine Okafor is out, but we don't know yet. He is with the team, so he hasn't been ruled out yet. We just need to wait and see. At point guard, Lord Alfred Payton's at 7,300. There aren't many great DFS options priced well on this entire slate, so there's going to be a little bit of variance happening. Lord Alfred at 7,300 is averaging 35 points, 35 and a half, in fact, over his last three, so that's not bad. And TJ McConnell, Spanish Chocolate, they're not really in the market of shutting down someone like Alfred Payton. So I think he's fine. It is expensive, but I do think that he has some appeal. Now, it's 75 on DraftKings. That's probably pushing it a bit higher. I'm not really keen on TJ or on Sergio Rodriguez, although if you want to go cheap at point guard, there are very, very few options. And if they decide to give a minute split and play Rodriguez 24 minutes, he can get 25 points, and at 3,700, that can work out. But we're not relying upon him. He's at 33 on DraftKings, so very cheap there. And if you get the 25 points out of him, that's a pretty good result. But we're talking long shot stuff there. Evan Fournier is at 5,400 as a shooting guard. I like that. He's had a good record against Philly in the past. He had 33 in the last game. All in on him. Well, not all in, but happy with him. Source Castillo, Timothé Luwawu Cabarrot, Gerald Henderson, nothing much to see with any of those guys. At small forward, Terry Ross is always just a GPP guy. In fact, he has been just terrible. But we know he can go off. The problem is his highest score in the last 5 games has been just 18 points. He hasn't had one big game in the last 2 weeks of action. At some point it's going to come, and that's why when you're making multiple GPPs, he's in there. It's not a perfect matchup. Philadelphia can be a good matchup, but when you got Bob Cove on you, it can be a little bit difficult. He is one of the better defenders in the NBA, so that does limit what Ross can do, but at some point it's going to click for him. As for Bob Cove at 7,200, just feels a little bit too high for me. Really don't want to look at that in cash. 68 on DraftKings is better, but it's not great. At Power Forward, Holmesy, 4,800 for Rishon, 36 points today. No reason not to consider going back to him, I don't think. I think it's a really good spot. At 51 on DraftKings, it's maybe a little less appealing, but I still think that there's a ton of value there. As for Šarić at 78, not much tournament upside, but I think there's a fairly safe cash floor at that salary, while 54 for Aaron Gordon. Azza, it would be he's more GPP, but I don't even think it's a terrible cash play to get 26 or 27 out of him, but I would lean more towards GPP for Aaron Gordon. At centre, Nikola Vucevic is questionable. He is dealing with Achilles soreness again. If he is out, we're obviously going to see Bismack Biyombo come in and play big minutes. Now, big minutes for Bismack Biyombo doesn't mean big production. We've seen that plenty of times from him, that getting minutes doesn't mean a huge amount, but his salary's come down enough to 4,300 that if Vooch is out, I think you'd want to have a fair chunk of Bismack Biyombo. He's at 45 on DraftKings as well. If Vooch plays, I don't think I want to spend 8,000 on him, although he does really, really give it to Philadelphia. We've seen him do that multiple times, and that if we hear everything's okay with him, I don't think it'd be a terrible move to play him in that spot. I wouldn't be using Jelly Okafor regardless of his status. All right, let's move on to the next game now. We're going to talk Washington and Boston. There is no spread currently out for this one because we don't know the status of Isaiah Thomas. Also Markieff Morris, who's missed the last 2 games for the Wizards. Let's talk point guards. If we're going to assume that Isaiah is in, he is at 8,700. John Wall defense is a bother. He has averaged 46 the last 3 times these teams have played. I don't really feel confident about using Isaiah Thomas at that sort of a salary. He's at 82 on DraftKings, so I think that's great value for a GPP especially, but I don't really feel that good about using him in cash in that sort of a situation. As for Johnny Wall, he is at 10-2. Yeah, not bad. I think there are better options out there than John at that sort of a salary, but obviously the upside for him is pretty big in a good defensive matchup, but I don't love it. I like it at 96 on DraftKings. It's a lot more appealing there for Wooly, and he could easily get 50, but I wouldn't say I'm locking that in as a core play. At shooting guard, Avery Bradley at 6,300. He's fine. I think it's an okay matchup for him, but he has struggled a little recently. While Braddle's Beal is just too expensive for my taste. 8,100 is too much. 76 on DraftKings is also too much. Marcus Smart, if Thomas plays, has no interest. If Thomas is out, I still think that 6,300 is a little bit too high. For the small forwards, Jay Crowder at 5,900. I just don't see much there. There's a little bit of upside, but Otto Porter is a significant defensive handle, or load to handle is the best way of me putting that. So Jay has some upside, but it's not brilliant. It's not fantastic. And at 5,900, I think you can find better options in most spots. Bojan Bogdanovic is always just a GPP guy, and Otto Porter just continually feels too highly priced. At power forward, Amir Johnson, no thank you. Markieff Morris at 6,100 is too expensive also. At centre, Al Horford at 66. I like this for Al. He's been much better recently. If Isaiah is out, it helps him. If he's in, I still think it's a good spot here for Horford at 6,600, averaging 45 across his last 3. I like that. I also think we're going to get more of an even split between Jan Mihinmi and Marcin Gortat, so I don't think we want to use Gortat anywhere. And if you want to go cheap, you can use a guy like Jan Mihinmi. He's at 3,600 on FanDuel and 35 on DraftKings. He could easily get you 20 points with a big rebound night or a big defense night, but it's not lockable. It's not cash playable, I don't think. All right, move on to the next one. What do we got? Golden State and Oklahoma City. Reports came out that Kevin Durant is traveling with the team. I even saw some people say maybe he makes a surprise return. He is not making a surprise return. He's not being reevaluated to return until the end of March, so I don't think people need to start going and grabbing him in seasonal leagues or getting overly excited. I think he's just traveling with the team because he wants to travel with the team and provide support and maybe absorb some booze in Oklahoma City. The Warriors are favored by 2 and the total is 221 points here. At point guard, Steph is at 9,900. Yeah, no, he just isn't at that same level to get that sort of salary, and just seems continually overpriced by maybe $1,000 in most nights. He's at 94 on DraftKings, so it's a little bit better. And I would look at him as a tournament guy on DraftKings, but I don't feel great about it. When I look at Russ Westbrook at 13,400 for Russ, hard to go past him, really. That's getting high though. So on a 7-game slate, I don't have really any issue with fading him, but it is hard with what he's been doing. 13-3 on DraftKings. He's averaging 70 points over the last 5. That is phenomenally high. So I do really like him on DraftKings. Less so on FanDuel, but I do like him on DraftKings. Over there, no other point guards to really talk about. Let's talk shooting guards. Klay Thompson's been inconsistent all season, apart from recently where he's been playing a little bit better, or a lot better in fact. He's averaging 36 points over his last 5, but at 7,000 I still feel that is too high a price to spend on Klay, and 72 on DraftKings is way too high. I don't want to spend that on Klay Thompson over there. Vic Oladipo's at 6,000. I don't mind Oladipo here. Yes, he had a stinker in the last game, but he'd been playing pretty well previously, and he has had a track record of doing pretty well against Golden State, so he is not a bad option. Pat McCaw is a bad option, so is Alex Abrines. I don't really see much from either of those guys. Andre Iguodala's at 4,900. He had 30 points in his last outing, but that feels like the upper limit for Iguodala, so without having confidence in his floor or having a high ceiling, 4,900, it just feels a little bit too high in terms of his salary. Now, 46 on DraftKings, it's maybe looking a little bit better, but I still don't really believe that it's a brilliant play. Andre Robertson, no. At power forward, Taj Gibson at 42, just continue throwing him into GPPs, because once Billy Donovan realizes he should play 28 minutes a night, he's going to smash through that. Unfortunately, we just don't seem to be able to get that, and I don't really know the reason why. Draymond at 8,100. I don't like Draymond in this matchup. They do impact him negatively, the big men, the Stash brothers, so don't like Draymond really all that much here. Enes Kanter at 55. He can struggle against the Warriors too. We saw one big game out of him and one absolute turd so far this season, so he is a stay away for me. At center, Steve Adams really got back going in the last one, 40 points in his 35 minutes. He's at 5,200, but Warriors, that's the place where centers usually go to die, so I'm not really interested in using him. And of course, Zaza Pachulia is not tickling anyone's fancy at all. All right, where are we? Let's talk about the second last game of the night. We've got the Denver Nuggets and the Houston Rockets. No spread currently released for this game. The Nuggets have got a couple of injury worries. The Rooster, Danilo Gallinari, and Wilson Chandler are both listed as questionable. We've got Darrell Arthur, who's already been ruled out with that arthritic knee problem. Obviously, when Gallo and Chandler are out, it changes things. It opens up minutes for one show. It gives more minutes to Mason Plumlee. It gives more minutes to Fart and Will Barton, which then in turn gives more minutes to Gaz Harris and to Jameer Nelson and to the Blue Arrow. So a lot does change with these guys out. At this point, I'm going to assume that both Gallo and Chandler are playing, but obviously if things change, you can see how that's affected over on Basketball Monster on our DFS projections, as we can have a look how all those things get impacted. 4,900 for Pat Bev has been struggling somewhat as a point guard, but if there's a team to get some numbers happening against, it is the Denver Nuggets as a point guard. So Pat Bev can be considered more a GPP guy, but definitely has a level of upside here. And as for Jameer Nelson, I don't think I'd use Jameer unless we see both the Rooster and Chandler out, and then if Baby Neck is missing, then Jameer can get some of those extra minutes. The Blue Arrow, Jamal Murray, 4,400. If it was at 4,000, I'd say yeah. At 4,400, I don't really see that being a great investment. At 4,800 for him over on DraftKings, even more of a no-go. Lou Williams, Eric Gordon, I see no interest in them. The guys I want to look at is Jim Harden, 12,200 for Jim. Disappointed a little bit. He didn't. He had a pretty good game against Denver. He's been putting up some huge numbers, obviously, 60-point average over the last 5 games, and at 12,200, I don't think you can ask for too much more than that from your big money guy. So I think you're going to be deciding about whether you want Russ or whether you want Jim. In a lot of cases, to me, I think it's going to be Jim, and get some other point guards in there, but there are a few cheap shooting guards around this slate that might turn you towards Russ. So that's why often people ask me, who do you want, this guy or this guy? It really depends on where you're playing and how else you've structured your lineup, because you can find some other cheap options at other places, and it's never just an immediate comparison. I think Russ will score more than Jim. It's about, if I put this guy in, then it opens me up at other spots for other guys to get more points, and the cumulative between the two guys ends up being bigger than, say, the one-off comparison, if that makes any sense to anyone. Gaz Harris has been playing a lot of minutes. He's at $6,000. If the Rooster and Chandler are out, I'd be saying this. Nice, Gary! If they're in, I think it takes him back from 35 minutes to 32 minutes, 31 minutes, maybe around that mark, and that can be, maybe makes it hard for him to get $6,000 going there for Gaza. So I think I'll probably fade him in most spots, but I do like him. Obviously, Farton Will Barton was a complete disaster in the last game, and there is no reason to use him if the Rooster and Chandler both play. Speaking of the Rooster, at 6,500, I don't think we want to care there. Same with Wilson Chandler. Got old Baby Neck at 6,700. And Trev Ariza has been really struggling. I like his upside here, though. Ariza, he's a definite 30-pointer. We've definitely got 30 points in him. And at $5,000, that can be a nice little bonus. But there's obviously no cash play in him, given how inconsistent he's been. Speaking of inconsistent, Ryan Anderson's at 4,300. Only GPPs. We know that. While Nikola Jokic is at 10,500. Really bothered by foul trouble in the last matchup. Only put up 27 points. I think he's fine, but I don't think it's a great way to spend 10,500, to be honest. He's at 10-2 on DraftKings, and I reckon there are better... I love Jokic, you know that. I think there are better options out there than spending that on him. Clint Capella at 5,300. Yes, 30 points in 24 minutes in the last game. Load him up. Happy with him. Cash game, tournaments, I really like him. 54 on DraftKings. Yep. Look, I know that D'Antoni's a pain in the ass, but even if he gets 24 minutes, I feel pretty good about him being able to exceed that $5,400 value. I feel pretty confident in Clint. Hopefully, it's not misplaced confidence. As for Mason Plumlee, he gets the bump if Wilson Chandler is out, and he will probably play 30 minutes in a situation like that, which obviously helps his value and makes him a viable target. Let's move on to the last game of the night. The New York Knicks take on the Los Angeles Clippers. Is this a resting spot for the Clippers? Their first game out of the 5 for the week, first of a back-to-back. That remains to be seen. Kristaps Porzingis, he could be ready to go. He participated in practice, and the Knicks have now said they expect him to play. So we've got him listed as probable, so he should be ready to go. That takes a lot of upside off of Kylo Quinn and maybe a little bit out of Bill Hernan-Gomez as well. Let's start with the point guards. Derrick Rose at 6,200, no thanks. Yeah, the price has come down. It's not coming down far enough for what he does, so that's a no from me. Whereas Chrissy Paul has struggled in a big way, averaging just 26 over the last 3. He's at 8,400. A matchup against the Knicks and Derrick Rose could be just what he needs to get back going, but I don't feel great about using him in cash. I do feel pretty good about having him as a tournament upside type of a player, and I wouldn't even hate it in cash, to be honest. Austin Rivers at 4,000, not really feeling that. At shooting guard, Jamal Crawford, great upside play at 3,700 on both sides. Definitely not for cash, though. While JJ Redick is pretty similar, but he costs a little bit more and doesn't quite have the same upside, I don't believe, as what Jamal does. Courtney Lee is at 4,900, and there is no bang for your buck in that sort of a salary. For the small forwards, well, the Clippers have nobody, but Melo is there for the Knicks. He's at 7,900, and yeah, I think you should feel pretty good about Melo giving you 37. Around that sort of mark is a pretty good number for Melo. And at 7,900, it's not a total write-off. It's not brilliant, but it's not a total write-off. 8,200 on DraftKings is probably a little bit high, and I don't think that's really great. But I could see using Melo if you're struggling to find a small forward, because there aren't really many good small forwards on this slate. Speaking of not good small forwards, Lance Thomas is at 4,400, with Porzingis likely back. I don't think we're going to see a huge amount, or not as much Thomas as we've seen. He'd been putting up some pretty good numbers, not mind-blowing, but pretty good. And at 4,400, I'm not sure he gets to the level that's required. I like Blake Griffin here. I like the matchup for him. 8,700 for Blake. He'd been putting up some subpar performances, sort of recovered a little bit lately. I like him as a GPP type of option, whereas Kristaps down to 6,500. If he's ready to go, there's definitely some upside in playing him at that sort of a salary. That's not an expensive price tag at all. At center, Billy Hernan-Gomez at 57. Don't lock him in. Don't think he's a core guy because Hornacek is going to shaft him around. He might start him, he might bench him, he might start him and play him 18 minutes, he might bench him and play him 31. We just don't know exactly what he will do, but it is a favorable matchup for him, and at sub $6,000 he can easily get over 30, and that makes him worthwhile looking at. Same with DeAndre Jordan at 76. He should be able to exceed 40 points, and at 69 on DraftKings, that is really, really low. The Knicks do allow big numbers from centers, and Jordan has feasted on that in the past, so I think that he is a pretty good option to take a look at. All right, let's get ready to... someone's asking me who Baby Neck is. Wilson Chandler is Baby Neck. Go and have a look at Wilson Chandler and the tattoo across the front of his neck, and then get back to me. So that was Kojo Ashong Wilson. So thank you for that. That is Wilson Chandler is Baby Neck. So go and have a look. Go and have a look at a picture of Wilson Chandler, and you'll see. Picks of the day. FanDuel, Pat Bev 4,900, Dennis Schroeder 72, and Kemba at 8,000. The shooting guard, Jamal Crawford 37, Evan Fournier 54, and Jim Harden at 12-2. Small forward, Torian Prince 37, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist at 51, and Paulie George at 81. For power forward, Ersan Ilyasova 45, Dario Saric 78, and Blakey Griffin 87, and at centre, Bill Hernan-Gomez 57. For DraftKings, Sergio Rodriguez 33, Jeff Teague 59, and Russ at 13-3. Shooting guard, Jamal Crawford 37, Nick Batum 67, and Jim Harden at 12-7. Small forward, Torian Prince 35, Gordie Hayward 69, and Paulie George at 8,000. At power forward, Ersan's at 5,000, Saric is at 78, and Blakey Griffin's at 81, and at centre, DeAndre at 69, and Nikola Jokic at 10-2 if you want to spend up as a GPP. On DraftKings, on the Aussie sides, Moneyball, Spanish Chocolate 35, Alfred Payton 72, and Kemba at 81. Tarbo's at 39, Fournier is at 55, and Jim Harden's at 12-6. Small forward, Torian Prince 35, Jay Crowder at 57, and Paulie George at 84. At power forward, Ersan Ilyasova 49, Cody Zeller 56, and Blakey Griffin at 86, and at centre, Jan Mahimi 35, Billy Hernan-Gomez 58, and DeAndre Jordan at 8,000. Draft stars, Jameer Nelson 83, Johnny Walls 16-6, Joe Ingles 5950, Tim Hardaway 9350, and Jim Harden 24-3. At small forward, Torian Prince 5,000, Ersan Ilyasova 89, and Paulie George at 14,450. At power forward, Dario Saric 12,450, and Blakey Griffin at 15,000, and at centre, Billy Hernan-Gomez 91, and DeAndre Jordan 14,800. We're done. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Google Play, on TuneIn, and follow me on Twitter and Instagram at redrock_bball. We're done. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Dario Saric.